All right, our second steam cipher that we are going to talk about is A51. It was developed in 1987 and became a GSM standard in Europe and USA. A deliberately weakened version called A52 was developed also in 1987 for certain export regions. So in this case, actually, the effective key size is shorter. So actually, depending on the laws at that time, generally the algorithms that you give to third world countries actually either support 40-bit keys or they support longer keys, but algorithm is weakened. So actually it works like as if it is a 40-bit secret key. Okay. So it was initially kept secret, reverse engineered in 1999. Since you are including in every mobile phone, somebody will be able to reverse engineer it at some time. A GSM transmission is organized as sequences of bursts. In a typical channel and in one direction, one burst is sent every 4.615 milliseconds and contains 114 bits available for information. So A51 actually sends, encrypts, messages with 114 bits at a time. So A51 is used to produce for each burst a 114-bit sequence of key stream, which is XORed with the 114-bit plaintext prior to modulation. A51 is initialized by a 64-bit secret key and a publicly known 22-bit frame. Okay. A51 is replaced with A53, which is actually a block cipher called Kasumi after 3G. But A51 is still used in many cases. You have to use it if you are calling a person who is using a very old mobile phone, their mobile phone might only support this algorithm, or maybe the base station is old, so they don't have Kasumi there. So you might have to use A51. So it is still used also in Turkey in many regions. But if you move on to A53, it supports 384-bit frames when operating in GPRS or in the edge mode. Okay. So let's look at the picture of A51. So there are 3 LFSRs. The total length of these LFSRs, when you sum all of them, you end up with 64. So it works like this. All 3 registers are set to 0 initially. So you fill all of them with zeros. Then for 64 cycles, key bits are fed to the LFSRs. So you are actually feeding your key bits from here, 64 cycles. Then for 22 additional cycles, a 22-bit frame number is fed to the LFSRs. So in this case, you are only feeding this internal state, so no output is produced, okay? Then 100 additional clocks with majority function is performed to obtain the initial state. So let's see what the majority function is. So when you don't use the majority function, you run all of these 3 LFSRs. But when you are going to use the majority function, you just look at the places of these red arrows, okay? So assume that this is 0, this is 1, and this is 1. So if you are going to run for 1 cycle, you look at the majority. So in this example, it was 0, 1, 1. So ones are the majority. So these 2 LFSRs are run, but this stays as it is. Okay. So this is how the majority function works. So if all of them are 0, majority is 0. So you run 3 LFSRs. But if it is like 1, 0, 0, so you only run these 2. So at some times you use only 2 LFSRs, and sometimes you use 3 LFSRs. Okay. So after these initial states, you obtain the initial state. After these 3 steps, you obtain the initial state. 228 clocks are performed to produce 228 bits of key stream, which is XORed to the plaintext. As you can see, this is the double of 114 bits. So you actually obtain 2 bursts in a single, run of this algorithm. So let's talk about exhaustive search. Since we are talking about 64 bits, you can guess that you can perform an exhaustive search attack, because in the worst case scenario, you have to capture the ciphertext and try 2 to the 64 possible key to decrypt it. So it is easy to guess a part of the GSM communication. In other words, we can guess some blocks of the plain text. You also capture the ciphertext, so you XOR them. You obtain some part of the key stream. So your aim is which internal states produces this key stream. Okay, so you perform the brute force attack there. So it is easy to capture the ciphertext, of course, because this is a wireless communication. One can stay close to the target or to the base GSM station that you are connected to and capture the ciphertext. So we can always capture some part of the key stream and perform exhaustive search on the key to check if it produces the same key stream. On a single GPU, at some point I had an implementation which can try 2 to the 34 encryptions in a second. But of course, this was an old result. I think with new GPUs, you can increase this to 36 or 37, depends on your implementation and the GPU. So, but with this old results with 32 GPUs, exhaustive search of 2 to the 64 encryptions will take a year. So if you have better GPUs or more GPUs, you can do it in a few days, let's say. But the problem is that listening to a GSM communication in a few days might not be a good idea for you because you have to perform this attack for every communication all the time. So question is, can I perform the attack only once and listen everybody after that? And the answer is, unfortunately, yes. So we cannot spend a year for every exhaustive search. We can do the search once and store the results. Such a search would require 2 to the 64 because we have 64-bit key, but we have also 22-bit frame and we don't know which frame they are going to use. So you have to perform 2 to the 86 encryptions because we cannot know the frame number at the beginning. But instead of performing exhaustive search on the key and the frame, we can do it on the initial state, which can take at most 2 to the 64 different values. Assume we have a way to go back from initial state to the key and the frame. So you might think, what am I talking about? So recall how we obtained the initial state. So initially, every register was set to 0. Then we fed our 64-bit key. Then we fed our 22-bit frame. Then we run it 100 times. Then we obtain the initial state. So at this point, we have zeros and ones filled in this register. So this is the thing actually we need to capture, because if you know those values, you can produce the key stream, and that is the thing that you want to do. So this is why having 3 LFSRs in 64-bit in total is a bad idea, because now I can perform an exhaustive search here at the initial state. So they should have more LFSRs or larger LFSRs to prevent this kind of attack. So the weakness actually comes from here. Okay. So further analysis shows that not every 64-bit key stream can be achieved when every key and frame combination is tried. Actually, there are at most 2 to the 61.16 key streams, which is not that important, but reduces the space with a multiple of 1/8, I guess, right? So, but still. The thing is that you can perform time memory trade-off attacks. We cannot store key stream for every initial state, because storing 2 to the 61 initial states and the results will take billions or billions of petabytes, and we don't have that storage. So instead, we can reduce the memory cost by using time memory trade-offs attacks, which uses rainbow tables. So from a master's thesis in 2010, what they did was to create tables that is around 2 terabytes. So probably they had 2 terabyte hard drives. So put these tables to there, which were constructed by using many GPUs. So whenever you give 114 bits of non-plain text, which means that you are actually giving the key stream, these tables can decrypt the GSM conversation with probability larger than 19%. So if you create larger tables, which currently we have larger hard drives, so we can store like 4 terabytes and so on, this percentage increases. But when you create these tables, actually, you are having an internal state, encrypt it, produce the key stream, consider it as an internal state, encrypt that too, and so on and so forth. So there, actually, you are creating a n encryptions, okay? The size of n actually increases your success probability. So they performed this attack in 2010. Today, I can create 2 terabytes of rainbow tables, which can, decrypt any GSM conversation with probability larger than 19.99%. Okay. So it is not about the size, but it is also how you create it. Okay. Today, we can create similar rainbow tables that will decrypt the conversation with probability larger than 99%, which I also just mentioned. So we should be careful. Somebody walking next to us might be actually listening to our conversation, because they might have a hard drive in their backpack attached to an ARM processor together with an antenna, and they may be listening to everybody while they are walking. Okay, it will be a very small device, you wouldn't even notice.